o'clock in Gardner, Kansas. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everyone. Got a full crowd today. Awesome. We are going to start with a presentation on the Electric Master Plan. Gons, it's your show.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. In 2006, Gardner Energy retained a company out of Texas, Mere Engineering, to do a electric master plan. The reason for that master plan was in anticipation to the intermodal. And it was basically concentrated on the distribution and substation. So last year, the city retained Kiewit Engineering to do a master plan by looking at generation, substation, transmission, and distribution. So tonight, we have Kiewit here. Max Sherman will be doing the presentation with the findings and recommendations.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I'm Max Sherman. I promise not to take you page by page through that 2-volume document. We understand you've got a full agenda tonight. We'll be mindful of your time. I also want to introduce Craig Brigette from Kiewit, one of the other project managers that worked on this. So lots of gray hair, worked on this study, which I view as a good thing. Hopefully I know how to work your mouse.
Lots of experience.
Okay? So the purpose was, there were several. One, study. One was to, and I'm hoping you can hear me,
Yes.
Develop a roadmap for the successors to the existing management team, taking the long view. Assist with the long-term planning for operation of the system. Document the institutional knowledge that's up here but not written down. Provide some high-level guidance from folks that have been around the industry for a number of years. We looked at 6 areas. We looked at the load forecast, including the city as a whole and the individual substations. Regulatory compliance, what's out there that you need to be aware of, or the utility needs to be aware of. The condition of the existing generating assets, expansion planning, what's a realistic, least cost approach to meeting the load for the citizens of the city of Gardner. So the expansion planning was a big effort. Some recommendations for the transmission part of the city's electric system, substations, distribution, and a capital improvement program. So the approach to the issues, we got brought in to provide a third-party perspective. But also that charged us with the need to document and write down the institutional knowledge that the city and the utility has. There's no substitute for visiting the site, kicking the tires. This is not something you do as a desktop study, back at your home office. You got to go see what's there. The data analysis, on the other hand, once it's provided, we asked for a lot and got a lot. We could analyze that. It's a collaborative effort. And at the end of the day, I think we have a roadmap. So let me just start taking you through the objectives and the results. The first objective, which is to put together the load and energy forecasts, both annual and monthly, this year through 2040. So our base case load growth forecast. We're forecasting 1.6 per year load growth on peak demand and energy. That's with a greater than 50% chance of occurrence. It's not huge, it's not low. We also did a high case and we did a low case. And so what does that tell us? Among other things, it shows a capacity deficiency, meaning you're short on generation starting in 2026 with expiration of the Grand River Dam Authority purchase It grows over time with load growth at that 1.6% per year, a little less than a megawatt a year. And expiration of your Marshall wind purchase in 2035, which means you gotta do something. So this is the base case load forecast. The energy numbers are to the left. The capacity numbers are to the right, power. So you are fundamentally a residential community. So if you look at the bars of this, the ones in yellow represent the annual energy consumption, including the history going back to 2010 through last year. The yellow are your residential customers. The dark blue is your commercial load. The aqua, turquoise, is your industrial. So you're primarily residential. And when you add on electrical losses for distributing the energy around town, that adds about 6.5%, give or take. That dark blue line represents your annual energy consumption. So for 2024, north of 150,000, maybe 160,000 plus megawatt hours. For demand, call it horsepower. We call it megawatts in the power world. That's the dotted line at the top. You had a high peak last year because you had abnormally warm weather. And when forecasters, ours included, do load forecasts, we do it based on average weather. And we took your average weather going back to 2010. So we didn't use one data point. We had a lot of talk about this, but we used average weather. And that's what our forecasts are based on. And you can ask, well, okay, Sherman, what happens if it's a hot summer? That's why you have reserves. And that's something you're required to have in the Southwest Power Pool, and you've got them. And that was part of our metric. Those were incorporated, those are included. If you grow at a high load forecast, which I believe is 2.6% per year, 2040, you're gonna have a peak load of around 64 megawatts compared to 54. About a 9 megawatt difference, okay, 9.5. If it's a low load forecast, low growth, the economy craters, whatever, you're at 50.9, and that's roughly a 1.2% load growth per year. So there's a band there, there's uncertainty in the range. You know, we're calling it like we see it. We think 1.6% is about where this thing is likely to wind up, based on history since 2010, okay? And load growth in Johnson County as a whole, we used a bunch of metrics. The granular data is in the report. You can read to your heart's content. It's all there. The second one is regulatory compliance. What do you need to worry about, okay? Or at least, what do you need to know is out there? And there are really four. The first one is the Kansas Corporation Commission. Now, you're not normally subject to KCC jurisdiction, which I would think most of us in this room would consider to be a good thing. If you build transmission in somebody else's service territory, or if you acquire through annexation somebody else's service territory and elect to serve it, you know, the rules for how that's paid, how the utility that had the service territory gets compensated, there's state law for that. But as it happens, you folks have been acquiring farmland, okay? I mean, I'll make a general statement. There's not a lot of electric load on farmland that you get to compensate a utility that surrenders some service territory for, okay? So, just giving you an opinion, I don't see a lot of risk there. Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, they regulate power at wholesale, not retail, okay? Under the Federal Power Act of 1920 and all the amendments since then. There's nothing there that you need to worry about beyond the North American Electric Reliability Corporation requirements that are noted below. We found 24 potentially applicable standards identified considering your role in life as a distribution provider and a generator operator and a generation owner, okay? So at some point, staff's probably gonna have to go through those and decide which applies and which don't. But the reason that document behind me is so thick is that we've included the documents so that you can go read them should you choose. Okay, and third, and the last on the list is environmental. You've got 2 frame 5 combustion turbines sitting out at the plant, okay? You've got an operating permit for it, okay? It's a good permit, it's all good. And so that needs to be maintained. You need to stay in compliance with that. Some of you might ask a question that I'm going to anticipate, which is what about CO2 and greenhouse gases? Because EPA has come out with a whole new bunch of regulations for new power plants. And as it happens, they announced a month or so ago they're going to kick the can down the road for a year on the existing generating assets. You could argue it's past the next election. You can decide that for yourselves, but either way, it's going to be next year before something happens on that, if it does. The next item was to look at the existing generating units, look at the condition, provide recommendations and modifications, upgrades and staffing. Craig here was the one that led that effort. Prior life, he crawled through those machines 20, 30 years ago, so he was back in the saddle. You've got some known issues on these machines. We think they could be resolved at a pretty modest cost, which will get you 3 megawatts, if we're right, followed by upgrading unit 2 and then unit 1 in that order to an R model. We recommend upgrading unit 2 to an R model before the summer of 2026 and upgrading unit 1 to an R model before the summer of 2028. So what we're really saying is get it done in the fall of 25 and the fall of 27. Give yourself some time, give yourself some room in case something happens that you don't expect. Gives you time to fix it before you get hit with the summer. So, and we've given you the numbers there and the megawatt increase. You're in a really nice position as a municipal utility because even though you've got this small capacity deficiency in 2 years, you've got generation on the ground that, like my 1964 Fairlane that I had overhauled and completely redone 20 years ago, can, for the limited use that you're going to make of it, provide the additional megawatts you need for the next few years, okay? A lot of municipals and a lot of larger investor-owned utilities are kind of running out of supply and don't have that option. For your size, you do, and that is not to be taken lightly. We were also asked to look at staffing, and our recommendation there is stay where you are. You got 2 guys as the operators, reliability perspective, you should not go lower. From a need perspective, given that these units don't run very much, there's no need to increase staff. We think you're good where you are. We also had suggestions. This is not as strong as recommendations, but this is, we think you ought to do it, but we're not going to bang our fist on the table and say, God, you really should. One is to get that fuel oil tank inspection done every 10 years. The second, we've got a protective system maintenance and testing program suggestion based on an ERC standard. There's some GSU transformer testing. We suggest be completed to see if some high voltage bushings need to be replaced. Rather do the testing than let the GSU give you the answer at its own time, okay? And you've got some cables between the generator and the generator circuit breaker for both units that date to the overhaul of those units about the time you acquired them 35 years ago, okay? It might be just as cheap to say the heck with it and replace the cable and not bother hiring a testing company. But either way, you ought to do one or the other. So we were also asked to look at options for replacing or adding generation. You know, what do the alternatives look like? The first one, good, I'm not running too late, I hope. Wholesale market paper capacity. There is, in the market power trading world, you can buy energy separately, you can buy capacity separately. This first bullet is the capacity separately. It's like renting a car but not being able to drive it, okay? Because you could name the unit, you could name how many megawatts you've got from it. It helps you meet your Southwest Power Pool capacity obligation that as a utility you're obligated to have, load plus so many % reserves. The price of it's quadrupled in the last year. It's probably gonna go higher, but you don't get to schedule any energy from it. You've gotta get that from the market. So that's one angle. The second one is, in these next 5 bullets, are various combinations of renewables. These were looked at in the Kiewit study about 4 years ago. And we've updated the cost estimates. You'll notice that I'm calling this AC, solar alternating current, and I'm doing that for a reason. Most developers and most renewable folks, including our own engineers, think in terms of direct current, DC. You've got alternating current on the wire. It turns out there's a significant deduct between DC and AC. And what you typically sell to, what you do sell to your customers and what your customers use is alternating current, okay? So if somebody tells you 9 megawatts DC PV solar, well, that might actually be 7 megawatts AC. So try to get it on the same scale that we're all used to, the same reference measurement. So 9 megawatts AC PV solar, today's dollars about 16 million. 4 megawatts of battery energy storage system. We use the Tesla Megapack, which we think is a pretty good choice. 8.2 million. And you'll see that when you add 16.3 million for the solar and 18.2 million for the 4 megawatts of BESS, and you combine them, you get 24.5 million. There are no economies of scale in putting the two things on the same site. Not at this level of uncertainty, okay? So in any event, you've got combinations there. We did price estimate a replacement combustion turbine that's in the same size class as your existing frame 5s. And the number came in pretty stout at 44 million. Now, it's a Kiewit estimate, all the EPC stuff that we normally do. You might be able to get it done for, let's call it 20% less, maybe 25% less, but at the end of the day, that's a lot of money for 13 megawatts when you're only growing a megawatt a year. It's hard to justify putting in a slug, a new generation, that's 13 times your annual growth and doing that all at once, okay? That's just a lot of excess you're gonna have. We did also look at what if you refurbished a 40 megawatt combustion turbine? Could you make it fit? What would it cost? This would basically replace the existing 2 frame 5s you've got, cover basically most of your peak load. Obviously, you know, so it's basically, it's a wholesale replacement for what you got. Kiewit's not in the business of refurbishing combustion turbines. That's not what we do. But Pro Energy Services over in Sedalia, and we named them in our contact in the report, is very much in that business. They're probably the dominant provider. And they gave me some indicatives over the phone that I have their BD VP's permission to quote. It's in the document. That's the good news. The bad news is that there's such a demand for new generation supply in this country, and it affects them as well as everybody else, that they're no longer doing, at this time, single unit additions. If you want to do 4 of these, they'll be happy to talk to you. If you want to do only 1, probably not. But his name's in the report. You can call their main number and have a conversation for yourselves if you want to basically validate that. So candidly, putting in 160 megawatts of generation for a 40 megawatt community, that's also hard to justify, but this is the number for 1 machine. Energy efficiency programs. We were asked to look at that. And we did our estimates based on what Evergy Metro Kansas has come up with. So we were able to scale it for Gardner, so it's based on Johnson County, based on their projections. It's a public document. And the answer is there's not much of a benefit there in terms of megawatts or in terms of megawatt hours. That's the good news. The bad news is that for every dollar you spend on a program like this, you'll save 26 cents. Okay? And that's not net, that's gross, which means you're paying $193 a megawatt hour to avoid that megawatt hour it might cost you $50, okay? So economically, we don't see the rationale for going ahead with it. If you want to do it for other reasons, that's a different answer. But if it's based on economics, this doesn't pay for itself. So the next is, what's the recommended capacity portfolio to get us through the next few years? Ideally to 2040. We really got more to the early to mid-2030s. The base plan is to refurbish your frame 5 generating units that you've already got. As we've described above, keep them in service. We think adding 9 megawatts of solar PV in 2030 makes some sense. It will not have 9 megawatts of capacity value. It might have 3, but it'll have a decent amount of energy. Recognize that the way that the Southwest Power Pool rates generating assets, it's based on their availability to produce at the time of system peak. Okay. And as an old school utility guy, I want to point out there's something in the electric world called the evening peak. Evening, near or after sundown, when everybody's gone home, the appliances are on, the TV's on, the air conditioners are going full bore, you know, and solar starts declining mid-afternoon. Okay. So as a result, Southwest Power Pool will look at what an asset does the last 3 years at the time of that hour of annual system peak. So you won't get your 9 megawatts. We think it'll be about 3. And what this plan does is postpone the need for additional generating capacity to 2035, about a decade. And, you know, can we tell you with absolute clarity what the world's going to look like in 2035? Not in your life, okay? We do have an alternate plan, which is add 4 megawatts of battery storage in 2035. That's a manageable cost. Now recognize that what batteries do, they take energy and store it. You get back less of what you put in, 80 to 86%, okay? So, but it allows you to shift, but it does not manufacture electricity. But it's good for about 4 hours of storage. So you gotta pick carefully when you choose to discharge it, okay? How do you compare these various costs generation? There's no perfect way to do it. This is $1 per kilowatt year. You can see the Gardner combustion turbines come in pretty favorable. Part of that's because they don't run much, but for a total dollars basis, that's pretty attractive. You know, the SPP market, you know, it's up there as demand gets high and supply gets tight. The Grand River Dam Authority Power Purchase Agreement is the most expensive one on the list. That's why we recommend not going forward with it. If you wanted to, you're signing up for it for the next 25 years. There's a lot of energy with it, but it's the highest cost option we identify. So solar, photovoltaic, or with batteries, frankly, you're right in there with the combustion turbines. But in terms of upfront capital dollars, the combustion turbines are the way to go. They're by far the least expensive. We also looked at transmission, substation, and distribution. So we have some recommendations there based on the objective of enhancing reliability, enhancements to the system, protective devices, things for reliability, capacity replacement recommendations, and capital improvements as in money through 2040. Transmission, we had a recommendation for a more formal comprehensive inspection program. Substations, you can upgrade T2 to 30 megawatts up to 2026 without an overload. You can go through these in detail. One thing we did recommend is consider initiating land acquisition efforts for Substation 5. The need for that sub is a few years out, but land's not getting any cheaper. So that's the least expensive part of a project. And electrical projects, by the way, Electrical equipment has gotten darn expensive, and lead times have gotten a lot worse. I'll skip the war stories, but it's painful. But land's a cheap one. If you could buy land at a reasonable price now and lock it in, we'd recommend it. On the distribution side, again, a little more formal pole inspection program. Depending on what you do in the renewables arena and what you see in the way of load growth, we do recommend load flow studies, short circuit analysis, and other coordination studies just to help maintain reliability of the system. Excuse me. Our distribution engineer recommended a type of conductor in the design on one of the new circuits. And we're also suggesting that you use some high visibility markers or barriers. That's another word for bollards, to protect streetlights that get contacted by an errant driver every so often, a little too often. Capital improvement program, as in money. These are the numbers that we're recommending. These are in 2024 dollars. We used 4% per year to escalate to the year of expenditure. You know, hopefully that's realistic over the long term. Any given year it'll be different. This is what it is for substations, and we threw a number at it for the land acquisition of sub 5. So a substation for significant dollars there. It's a long-term project. Lead time for electrical equipment is just flat painful. You can no longer issue a 2-page memorandum purchase order and have the gear show up in a truck in 2 months. High voltage breakers, 110 weeks?
Yeah.
Something like that? 2 years. Control enclosures, 110 weeks. Transformers. It used to be super large transformers, you know, for large power plants like Dogwood over at Pleasant Hill, which I was the developer of in a previous life. After receipt of order, they'd show up in a year. Now try 42 months, okay? Control enclosures, 110 weeks, okay? It defines ugly. So, in terms of recommendations, they're in the report. You can go through all the detail you want, it's all there. But I want to throw out a commendation as well. The city's electric department's got a well-run municipal utility. And if we see that, we think it's incumbent upon us to say so. And so we're saying that to you tonight. And the willingness to seek second opinions on key issues, not everybody does that. Your folks do. And we think that's a good thing. So thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Max. And again, thank you to Gons and the electric department and all your crew. Obviously, you're doing a very good job there. I would open it up if there's questions from the council. Let's see.
You go first, Mark.
Okay.
On the generation chart,
Yes.
out of curiosity, what would OPPD's number be? That's our largest contract, right? For wholesale power.
No. The OPPD PPA expired in 2018, and it was replaced by Dogwood.
Oh, that's right.
Speaking as the developer for Dogwood, I think that was an excellent choice.
Oh, good.
But we also evaluated it when I was with a prior employer, and Dogwood was very competitive. And I suspect it is.
I forgot that's what we used for that.
So besides GRDA, which is the one that KMEA is trying to push, I have approached different utilities as far as getting the same, what is a replacement cost for GRDA, and it's not any cheaper. And I also reached out to OPPD and have not heard anything back from them so far.
Okay, and then when you were doing your
OPPD is
estimations-
adding generation for their own load as well. They're scrambling.
Okay. When you're doing your estimations for using our turbines, being that they're natural gas, did you look at the consideration of if natural gas increases at a set rate for the next 10 years, what that operating cost looks like compared to those other things that
we used a 4% escalation for everything. As you
For
well
everything.
know, natural gas varies all over the map. But those turbines don't run a lot. They've got a high heat rate, pretty inefficient, so they're a price cap. So we don't expect that to have a major, the price of natural gas at those generating units to have a major impact on the economics. They run 50 to 100 hours a year out of 8,760.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Max, for coming out. I remember our discussion 4 years ago when we went through this exercise, and then 2 years after that, pretty much obsolete because of a variety of factors. But appreciate you guys. You know, it's just changing constantly, and especially since COVID, it's been just a mess. So thanks for coming out and helping us out again. My question is really more around distributed capacity. In other words, if we were to encourage homeowners in the community, for example, or business owners, to do rooftop solar, for example. I'm just throwing it out there because I know we have industrial solar capacity. We also potentially have residential and commercial rooftop capacity. Would we get any kind of a good cost basis based on other municipalities may have already done net metering or some sort of a combination of that you might be aware of? But do you know of anything that would be a potential outlet over there to maybe help to supplement generate or defray generating capacity from the grid that might actually be cost effective?
We haven't looked at it for Gardner, so I'm going to give you kind of a higher level answer based on what's happening in my home state, which is California, which I love to criticize.
Oh, that's great.
Okay. One of the things with rooftop solar that you've got to be very careful of from an economic standpoint is a lot of rooftop solar installers pushed for, and in many states got, it's finally being corrected, an arrangement where the owner or the lessee of those solar panels, you may not own them if you're the homeowner.
Correct.
You may be leasing them for the next 20 years, which complicates a home sale, but that's a different discussion. Getting full retail to take power back to the grid, okay? The problem with that is, and your average rate is what, 10 cents a kilowatt hour, give or take, residential? In a, let's call it a 4-cent energy market. So if you do that, then you have folks that can't afford solar panels subsidizing the folks that do, okay?
Yep.
Which is, I have an issue with, but that's my opinion.
Sure.
But obviously, the regulatory authority's got the right to do that. The California Public Utilities Commission finally, after a lot of screaming, reversed course and took the rate that solar panel homeowners get to avoided cost, which is the incremental or decremental cost of reduction.
Correct.
Which in my view is what it should be. The challenge with rooftop solar is that it goes away at the time of system peak. And so in California, much bigger scale than what you got here, okay? You've got a problem where solar's diving for the horizon, okay? The load is still up. You've got to bring fossil generation up as fast as you possibly can. And the challenge, North American Electric Reliability Corp reports are out there for everybody to see and read. That is an issue in terms of whether and how regularly you could do it. In normal weather, probably get by with it. In extreme weather, you know, the annual heat wave,
Sure.
it's touch and go. Okay?
But we would have that same strain even without
Yeah.
solar in times of extreme heat and use, correct?
Well, you could at least predict the load, and KMEA, who I get is your energy manager, could call on you to run, and you know in advance
Yeah.
that you're going to be needed. So you've got those mechanisms in place. So the way I would treat solar, it's more of an energy resource than a capacity resource.
Okay. And does it make sense from a municipal perspective with regard to, again, they'd be pulling amps from the grid when they're not using solar. So it's,
I'd hesitate to give you a straight answer without our going back and looking at it, okay?
I appreciate it, Max.
Okay, I'd be telling you more than I know.
Oh, no, I
Okay.
understand. And I know there wouldn't be a very large group of people here in Kansas doing
Okay.
rooftop solar because they're not pushing it as hard as
Yeah.
California is, but
If it's a small number of homeowners, it's a minimal impact, which is a way of saying it may not matter much. But at the same time, you've also got interconnection standards that people have to go through. Your risk, and one of our clients, and I'll name them because it's family, it's Garden City,
Yeah.
other end of the state. They've had customers come into their offices and say, hey, I've signed up for rooftop solar. I want to make sure I get my rebate. It's,
cost
and
plus or whatever,
the solar installers made claims that, I'll say it diplomatically, are not consistent with the rate schedules on file.
that happens a lot. Yeah,
Okay.
I understand that.
So if it is going to be a benefit to the city and to the utility without any cross-subsidization, I would tell you, at the minimum, make sure that avoided cost is the transfer price.
Okay. Thanks, Max.
Max, I'm new to the council, so I might ask a stupid question or two, but one of the things I wanted to kind of understand, or get a better understanding is what impact, if any, would more push or demand towards electric vehicles put on the projections you made?
It's in the document and they're included. The answer is.
That would include that would be included in the 1.6?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the answer is not much. We've got a forecast of something like, I've forgotten the exact number of the report called, 140 EVs in the town this year, growing to maybe 1,000 plus in 2040. And by the time you look at the miles they drive, and it's 3 kilowatt hours of battery charge per mile, and kind of work through the math, there is a graph buried in the report, but it's actually not that much. And that's included in the projections.
Second question, just in the projection, some of the things you're recommending, whether it's solar flares or other sources, how much attention are we paying to maybe while we're doing these upgrades, hardening our system here in Gardner, Kansas for electromagnetic EMP type pulses, whether they're natural events or other?
We didn't look at that. I'm an ex-Cold Warrior, so that may be where your question is coming from.
Well,
But-
there's actually sun weather that's forecasted in the next 2 years to
Yeah.
hit us as well.
We did not look at that particular issue.
Is that an expensive endeavor?
These days, doing anything with a grid is an expensive exercise, okay?
Well,
That's-
I guess my question is.
But in terms of specifics, I'd have to go get you the answer and get back to you.
Well, if we're looking at 2 or 3 years to replace a transformer at a substation.
Yeah.
And it gets blown out by an EMP, I think we've got a big problem.
I'll have to get with our transformer folks and see what kind of an answer I can get for you.
Yeah. The issue that we're going to run into, though, Steve, is that this is going any kind of EMP event would actually be a grid-wide disruption.
Yeah.
So even if we hardened our own equipment for that contingency, that just fixes the door, but we're not going to be able to let anything in the door because the grid that's feeding the door won't be active.
And the last comment, I really appreciated your delving into the benefits of the 2 gas generators that we have. I think that's a good idea. I also think that the battery storage is a good idea because that can get us over some very small but immediate humps in jumps in load and where we'd have to scramble to go do something that's virtually automatic.
Yeah.
It can last us for a while.
What we have in the report is pricing from Tesla for their mega packs. So you could go online to the Tesla website and get your own pricing for those, but those numbers that you'll get, assuming they haven't updated their pricing, is what we have in the document.
That was just one feature I really liked of what you put together
high peaks and evening peaks, weather
Yeah.
issues. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I do have one question, sorry. What's the size of the 9 megawatt solar generation? I mean, from a land kind of standpoint?
Rule of thumb, it's 5 to 6 acres per megawatt of DC. So 9 times 6 is 45. So you're talking, counting the DC to AC conversion, adding another 30%. You're talking upper 50s in the way of acreage.
Question? Okay, any other questions? Council? No?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we do have a public hearing. Public hearing number 1. Hold a public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments to a request for a waiver of distance limitation to allow for the sale of consumption of cereal, malt beverages for consumption within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the Abdallah Shriners event weekend at the Johnson County Fairground. Do I have a motion to open the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Shute, second Baldwin. We open the public hearing for the purpose of receiving comments to a request for the waiver of the distance limitation. Hearing is open. Anyone like to step forward?
Gotta have a vote.
I'm sorry.
Point of order.
Sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Okay. Hearing is open. Anyone like to speak? Seeing no one come forward, I have a motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
Motion McNear, second Baldwin. We close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Public hearing is closed. Now move to public comments. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of the public hearing. If you wish to come forward, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. There is a 5-minute time clock to your left. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and the podium is now open.
I think you made this for tall people.
Sorry. Kind of aim it down.
Hello, Mayor and council members and the rest of the people who are in attendance. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. My name is Katie Hoffman. I live at 8456 Mauer Road in Lenexa. I have lived in Gardner. I moved away in 2016, but I lived here probably 30 years. So I am a little familiar with the area. I'm here to tell you about the Kansas Silver-Haired Legislature. Was formed in 1982, created by an act of Congress in 1969. It's a unicameral legislature composed of 125 representatives, which is basically 1 per county in Kansas. However, the more populated counties have 6 representatives. Johnson County has 6. I am the chairman of the local area. We are all elected every 2 years. It's not the usual kind of election that you have in November, but it's in March. One must be 60 years of age to become a member. We advocate for seniors. And since it's statewide, we ask people from all across the state to provide us issues to present to the legislature each session. And in July, we will be deciding on the issues, excuse me, for the 2025 session. So we're just beginning that process. And then we do select which ones we think that would best help the people of Kansas and the seniors especially. We meet in October in the State House, and similar to the regular legislature, but we are all volunteer, so we don't get any pay like they do. We really don't have any power, but we want to. But at that October meeting then is the final issues that we will present to the legislature, and we'll have our own speaker who goes to the meetings, committee meetings if need be, and other people who will testify for or against. It's an interesting organization. We have all kinds of representatives from top to bottom. So we try to do a little bit of fundraising at our convention in October by a silent auction. And we do offer a nursing scholarship, preferably to someone who goes into geriatric nursing. But we contact the nursing schools to find out who would be interested. But we are presently trying to get some new suggestions for our issues to present. So any of you, please let us know if you have some suggestions. And remember, it's state, not federal. Unfortunately, we can't do much about that. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Council, any questions?
Oh, okay. I appreciate your taking the time to listen, and have a good meeting.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward? All right, seeing none, we will move to consent agenda. Is there an item on the consent agenda that would like to be removed?
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion Shute, second McNair. We approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Consent agenda passes. We have nothing on planning and zoning consent, no committee recommendations, no old business. Moving to new business. New business item number 1, consider a petition for the formation of a special benefit district for the Lone Star Prairie Development. Matt.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. The developer and property owner for the proposed Lone Star Prairie residential development has petitioned the city for the creation of a special benefit district for the construction of a lift station and off-site sanitary sewer improvements. Lone Star Prairie is a multi-phase residential development. They'll have approximately 188 single-family homes at full build-out. Maximum cost of the improvements for the improvement district is $1.15 million, including the cost of issuance for temporary notes and long-term bonds and the interest expense on the temporary notes. The cost of the improvements will be assessed 100% against the improvement district and 0% against the city at large. Proposed term of the improvement district is 20 years. The staff's recommendation that you adopt the resolution.
Thank you, Matt. Do we have any public comment on new business item number 1? Council, do you have questions?
I'm going to ask the same question I ask every time we have a benefit district, and that is, did they furnish a letter of credit or some sort of other instrument to back the creation of the district?
I don't believe we're requiring our letter of credit for this one, mainly because it's only the off-site improvements. Moving forward, we're taking a stricter look at allowing benefit districts for internal improvements, so we're not committing to multiple phases.
Okay, all right. So this is just the connections to the external to outside the property, but not internal.
It's also a lower dollar amount compared to some of our other benefit districts.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure we never end up in the situation that we ended up with Stone Creek. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. We have a motion for new business item number 1.
Second.
Motion McNear, second Baldwin. We adopt resolution number 2140, determining the advisability of certain internal improvements in the city of Gardner, Kansas, and authorizing, providing, for the making of such improvements in accordance with the findings of the governing body in KSA 12-6A01 and Sequoia Lone Star Prairie Special Benefit District. City Clerk.
Councilmember McNair.
Yes.
Councilmember Baldwin.
Yes.
Councilmember Ween.
Yes.
Councilmember Shute.
Yes.
Resolution 2140 passes. New business item number 2, consider adopting a resolution authorizing the adoption and execution of an amended and restated benefit plan for the city of Gardner, Kansas. Shannon, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As you recall, at our April 1st meeting, work session, the city's employee benefits consultant and broker, CBIZ, presented a timeline for moving the benefit plan year to a January 1 renewal schedule. As part of this adjustment, all of the city's current offerings will renew July 1, 2024 for 6 months of coverage and renew again on January 1st, 2025 for a full month period. As part of this transition, Flex Made Easy, the city's service provider for flexible spending accounts, requires that the governing body pass a resolution authorizing staff to amend the plan year and continue the administration of these FSA services.
Thank you. Is there any public comment for new business item number 2? Council, do you have any questions? All right. And do I hear a motion for new business item number 2?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Baldwin, second Shute. We adopt resolution 2141, a resolution authorizing the adoption and execution of an amended and restated welfare benefit plan in the city of Gardner, Kansas. City Clerk.
Councilmember Baldwin,
Yes.
Councilmember Weed,
Yes.
Councilmember Shute,
Yes.
Councilmember McNair.
Yes.
Resolution 2141 passes. Thank you.
Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
New business item 3, consider authorizing the city administrator to execute a contract with Olson for Substation 4 final design, equipment and construction specifications, bid review and recommendation, and project management CIP project EL4005. Combs.
Good evening again. So, due to a series of voluntary annexations over the past several years, the need for a new substation was identified. In 2022, Olson was selected among several companies for the site location, land acquisition, and preliminary design of the substation. Originally, we had the substation for construction for 2032. Due to the growth we're having, and also taking into consideration the lead time for electrical equipment, it is imperative to begin the design now in order to have the substation operational by 2027. On November 20th of last year, City Council authorized staff to request a scope of work proposal from Olson that would include the final design, equipment and construction specifications, bid review, recommendation, project management. We received their proposal and we compare it to other similar projects we have, and the pricing is comparable to the other projects. For example, the Wynwood project, you look at the dollars per hour is about 159. Kill Creek is about $163, and this price is about 164. So the staff recommends for Olson to proceed with the final design.
Thank you, Hans. Is there any public comment for new business item number 3? Coming forward, council, questions?
Olson's design build on this, right? I assume that that's the case. We're going to do a design build with Olson on that?
No, since we have a lead time, it probably be a conventional construction.
Okay, I was wondering about that because I didn't see any potential funds here.
No, there's no need for a design build because we have like 3 years to do that construction.
Okay.
So, but what needs to be done, and we already started, is the requisition for transformers and circuit breakers.
Yes, and I think we approved that previously, but this here is just basically to finish the design and get everything laid out, the site laid out.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion McNair, we authorize the city administrator to execute a contract with Olson in the amount of $646,500 plus applicable sales tax for Substation 4 final design, equipment, and construction, specifications, bid review, and recommendation, and project management, CIP project number EL4005. City clerk. Not, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? New business item 3 passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. And new business item 4, consider a request for a waiver of the distance limitation in a general retailer special event permit to allow for the sale of cereal, marked up beverages, for consumption within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the Abdallah Shriners event weekend at the Johnson County Fairground. There you are.
Hello. So this is a yearly event that the Abdallah Shriners is putting on again this year in June. Their rodeo and demo derby, and they have requested to be able to sell and consume cereal malt beverages on the Johnson County Fairgrounds. So we've already had the police department run the application. We have no reason that anybody would not be able to have this license, so we need the waiver of distance for the 200 feet, and we will issue a special use permit.
Is there any public comment? I'm sorry, this is a
We did public hearing.
so there is no public comment. Any questions from council? Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion Shute, second Baldwin. We approve a request for a waiver of the distance limitation in a general retailer special event temporary permit to allow for the sale and consumption of cereal malt beverages within 200 feet of a school, church, or library during the Abdallah Shriners Rodeo and Demo Derby to be held June 13th through June 15th, 2024 at the Johnson County Fairgrounds, 136 East Washington Street. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? New business item 4 passes. So we'll move to council updates. Chief Waldeck.
We are working with emergency management on assessing the storm and working through some of those items. We were out this morning and put the drone up this morning to kind of look and make sure we understood the damage, and officers were out overnight assisting as well. And I think everything, we did have a few residents displaced from one apartment complex, but beyond that, everybody was able to stay in their homes, and we're keeping an eye on the progress of those things. Public Works and Utility both went out today as well and worked on some of that damage. And we're working closely with the National Weather Service, was out with emergency management today to try to assess what type of storm we had, and we do expect them to make that determination tomorrow in the morning sometime.
Okay. I have a question, but I'll come back to it, I think. City Clerk?
I have nothing tonight.
Finance Man?
Nothing tonight.
City Attorney?
Nothing for me.
Okay. Bonds, got a lot on the agenda tonight.
So last night with the storm, we didn't experience any outages.
Awesome.
We had some minor damage to the fence post at the Walmart lift station and at the Waverly, which is basically abandoned. But that's the extent of the damage.
Good, excellent. Jason, Parks?
Nothing tonight.
Dave?
Just a reminder, Planning Commission will meet next week, but it'll be on Tuesday evening since we have a holiday on Monday. So instead of the traditional Monday evening meeting, it'll be on Tuesday.
Kellen, Public Works?
Nothing further.
Okay. Councilman,
Yeah, this is Steve, yeah. I wanted to make I saw the folks out in my neighborhood last night, both the fire and the city police department were out there. I appreciate it. Just for the folks who are on the air, maybe watching this or in the room here, it looks like southeastern Gardner got the hardest hit, was the hardest hit part. I went out there myself because I live not too far from where some of the damage was, and there were trees that were literally snapped right off at the base that had fallen on cars and on houses. It looks like there was a pretty significant swath of damage that started about Horizon Trails apartment complex and went from there east northeast through through Arbor, was it through Aspen Creek. Willow Springs got hit really hard, and then it went down into Cottage Creek and Wildcat Run, that whole area, and then up towards Walmart. So that whole area, and it was about a 300-foot wide channel that you can definitely see. I don't know if you can see it from the drone, but you could definitely see it on the ground. People's fences were blown away. There were significant amounts of debarking and tree damage, and even some of the houses sustained a bit of damage. So I'm not a weatherman, but I think that there may have been something that spun up in that area. It was interesting because I didn't see on my phone, I didn't get a notification for anything regarding rotation or anything like that. So it might have been just a real quick, one and done. But I don't expect anybody to do any kind of disaster tourism or anything like that. I don't advocate that at all. The folks down there probably are going to need some assistance, definitely. And I want to also commend GONS and the utility staff. We had a couple of flickers. Even in our area, we got some brownouts, but we never lost power for more than 2 seconds. If there were a windstorm like that in another area of the city, they probably would have been still repairing lines right now. So again, the tree trimming program is working. I did see one of the Evergy lines. It was like literally like this over the road. So whatever went through there had some serious winds associated with it, at least 100 miles an hour. So I want to commend, again, our utilities department did a great job, and as well as public safety. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman McNear.
I just wanted a couple of shout outs. First, to God, his organization. Heck of a job last night keeping the power up. Keeping the run going with no outages. Excellent. Keep all that. Thank you for the excellent coverage last night. Also to the fire department. That's all I have.
Councilman Ween.
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate all of our recent graduates from this past weekend, including my youngest. And also then thank you, officer, for spending the evening, the night, the early morning with us on for Project Grad, which was a great event, I think, and it seemed like all the students were huge fans of you. So thank you for spending the early morning. I had to leave; I couldn't stay any longer, so it's pretty early, and so thank you for that.
Council President.
Nothing else.
I do have something this evening. I received a phone call, or I returned a phone call asking about any kind of help or assistance with cleanup with the limbs from the store, from the city. And I did reach out, Public Works, and it is not our policy per se to do anything on private grounds. We have in the past, though, utilized maybe a common area to bring different items to, and we'd set up a day or two to do some chipping and shredding. But I wanted to, I told him I would bring it before the council for discussion this evening. As I know, like Steve was saying, there's a lot of stuff out there. Didn't know if
And
anyone
not
had
just
thoughts.
trees either, but there's we know that several of the metal sheds that were in people's backyards got literally wrapped around around fences and stuff like that. There's fences down. Also, some unfortunate people that had trampolines in their backyard ended up having those get completely mangled too. So there's a lot of cleanup.
I did kind of an informal look, and I think last year, according to one of the sites I looked at, that some of the cities do offer services like that. Again, we haven't passed it. If we had the space and location, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to a drop-off location for a day or 2 days to provide chipping services, shred it up, and then donate that to somewhere. We'd have to find it. We in the past, talking with Kellen, I think we've done this in the pool overflow parking lot. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm aware of one time in the last, memory of employees of the city that we've done this. It was 5 years ago after an ice storm. The drop-off location was the overflow parking for the pool, which will be full of cars by next weekend. So we're probably gonna have to look for a different place to do that if we are directed to do so.
Well, if what you're saying is it was further south, I mean, is there, I think Veterans Park probably is not right, but
Is there any room over at the Energy Center possibly in that area? I know we've got some open space over there. Is there a possibility we could utilize some of that?
How much space,
Uh, do we need? Maybe half an acre, if that?
Comparable to the overflow pool parking lot, I guess.
Yeah.
And I would suggest that it be securable, because otherwise, unless we staff it 24/7, it will become a dump.
Oh, I
Well,
understand.
could it be a one-day event? I mean, you bring it that day and then it gets shredded and then we move on.
It depends on how quickly we can get a shredder under contract and on site. And, there's a lot of factors. We can certainly look into it. We would just have to do some logistics behind it.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to keep this open for days and days. We would just need,
That's kind of the issue, right? It's going to take a while to get organized. By then, they're going to have the stuff moved. I mean, you may have some stuff on site, but like your fence that's blown down, it's not going in here. And all your major stuff is going to get moved earlier. And if it's something significant, not small limbs that you're putting in your trash or something anyway,
these are trees.
then you're going to have a hard time getting it to the chipping and shredding location unless you have a trailer and everything else in the first place, which then if you could have gone there, you could have just kept on going down the road. So I don't know how much benefit this will be.
In addition to that, you probably have insurance claims, stuff that would take care of that. Big stuff, you're gonna have, professional tree trimming companies and that kind of stuff, and they offer them all available. So I agree, it's gonna take longer to get it set up and tore down, probably.
Yeah. Some of this is going to be insurable, other parts are not. They'll just go through Arbor Service. But if they do that, they're going to
If we had a place like, in Olathe where you can, dump off your dirt and your trees and
transfer
you do
station
the
there.
compost and all that stuff, that'd be a whole other thing. But since we don't really have a spot or our own equipment, then we're basically, it's kind of like the trash thing, right? We're having everybody bring it, we can't control who does what, and by the time we get it, it's too late to help anybody.
And there's no one's in favor of, putting it on the side of the curb, or on the curb and allowing pickup branches,
Oh, goodness.
branches, that
Well,
kind
we already have a brush pickup, but obviously it has to be bagged. I don't think that there's,
tied with twine.
Or tied with
2
twine.
feet long.
yeah. But you have to cut it to that size. That's the thing. If you've got big tree trunks, you're not going to do that.
No.
Right, but if it gets to a certain point, you're not doing yourself any good.
I would agree. And you're
Well,
right
you're not
about,
moving it.
and you're right about the insurance element for the folks who own their single-family homes and are going to put a claim in. Then all that's going to be taken care of by the folks who are going to do clearing. I'm a little more concerned about people like, for example, in Conestoga, who were also potentially affected here, and they might be leasing or they won't have the ability to do a lot.
Yeah, if we had a place to take it and we could shred it ourselves, then I'd be more inclined to say, hey, send one of the dump trucks around with some sort of a picker and throw it in there and do something with it. But we don't really have the facilities or even possibly the equipment. So again, I think we're kind of stuck, hands tied.
Okay. All right.
So we have consensus. I didn't have anything else, so motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion McNair. Motion Steve. Steve. To adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?